Hey, welcome back. This is Ask Coach Nate, episode number 9. Yes, my hair got a little longer. It is another COVID-19 lockdown here in California, but I think it looks pretty cool. Nate, what do you think of my hair?
I think
Is
it's
it going to
good.
work?
I like
It's okay
it.
for today?
It's
Yeah?
good.
All right. And on this episode, we're going to focus on effective methods to set goals for your fitness targets in 2021. And so we'll get Nate's perspective on how he thinks you should go about setting your goals. What's a good way to go about it? How do you understand how to set those targets based on your experience? If you don't have a lot of experience, like how do you set a goal that's realistic? So let's just jump into it, Nate. And why don't you help us understand how you think people should go about setting fitness goals for this year?
And we're gonna hear from you because I feel like you have a lot of good things to offer too on goals and goal setting and making them effective. But I think so. Just like very briefly in the
Thank you.
overview, very briefly in like overview thinking, I feel like there's two main categories of goals. You can have like an end goal, like you want to break 6 minutes in the mile or 5 minutes, or you want to go up Mount Diablo in an hour, and it's like a certain kind of like task that you want to accomplish. And I think that that's the most common way that people often think about goals. And a lot of times people have New Year's resolutions like, oh, I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to run a marathon, whatever. And it's like you just train and then you run a marathon in August and you did it. I feel like that can be very effective. I feel like the next level above that is a more refined version of that would be a SMART goal, where you like that's an acronym for like specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, where it has to be like specific, where you can easily like see what you're doing. It's measurable. You can tell whether or not you accomplished your goal. Like, did you run a mile in like 6:05 or 5:55? Like it's very clear whether or not you broke the 6 minute barrier. It's achievable. Like you have to be able to do it. Like I can't go set a goal of running a 2 hour marathon. Like that's a specific and measurable goal, but there's no way in hell that I would be able to do that. So that's pointless. And it has to be relevant. Like I'm a cyclist. I want to be performing well in cycling. Like my bench press is an irrelevant goal. Like I don't want to go and increase my max bench, but that I think seems pretty clear. And then time bound, like, are you trying to do it in the next 2 months, in the next 12 months, in the next 10 years? Like there's generally most people want to have like a very specific window for doing it. And I think that's great, especially if you're like moving along in your fitness process and you've been doing it for a little while and you know that like your PR for the mile is 6:30 and you think that 6 minutes is an achievable goal for this year. That's a great goal to have. If you are starting out from scratch and you've only just kind of started running or started cycling in the last like 6 months, maybe you got a bike in April because there was the COVID lockdown and you're like, I used to love riding, and you just are getting into it and you've done like a 20-mile ride, and that's like the most that you've achieved so far. Like setting a goal of riding a century in 6 hours is maybe achievable, maybe it's not, but there's no way of knowing because there's such a limited amount of data to like be able to project into the future what you're capable of doing. So I feel like earlier in the process, it can be helpful to set like little mini goals that are maybe achievable, but like just a month out, a few weeks out, 2 months out, but not anything like terribly lofty that's just like a year or two out. And then I think that there's also a lot of benefit to having process goals where you might not know what your specific end goal is. Like you don't know how fast you can run the mile, but you want to train 4 days a week or 5 days a week and do certain intervals so that you can get ready to like go after a mile PR in June, let's say. And it's all about the process of training and just getting as good as you can be and doing what you can to like move forward in a direction that is important to you. But time will tell how fast you can run the mile this year. And I've used both, I think, to good effect over the years personally. But yeah, I'd be interested in hearing what Gregory has to say about types of goals, what he thinks makes a good goal or a bad goal, and I don't know, what are some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah. Well, maybe I should start it with saying that, like, I'm a big believer in goal setting, and I spent many years now setting annual goals around this time. And for me, I actually do it in a variety of categories, right? Like I have fitness goals, I have like work and business related goals. I have savings and financial goals. And then I actually set other kind of personal goals. Like one time I was like, spend more time with my wife and my dog. And I had a measurable target on like how I wanted to do that, because I thought
Yeah.
it was important. And I just tend to be someone who really quantitative about my life. And I was like, that's something that I really value. And I didn't want to lose out on that. And so I decided, hey, I'll make that a goal for myself. So I think goal setting is a great way for certain type of personality to manage their life and get the results that they want, right? When it comes to fitness goals, I would think people should probably break it down, or maybe if people watch the video, it can probably be broken down in a couple categories. If you're a novice, you have less than a year of experience in whatever the category is: cycling, running, weight training, Muay Thai, whatever you're doing. You probably don't have enough data to set an effective goal that's quantifiable. So maybe make your goals more process oriented. Like, you're new to cycling, I'm going to ride and train 3 times a week, or I'm going to do a group ride every Saturday, or something like that. If you're like new to it, once you have a little more experience, then you can start going about like breaking your time in XYZ event, right? But maybe in the first set of the first kind of annual goal setting, you just need to go and do a bunch of events, right? Like, do the Mount Diablo challenge. What time do you get, right? Do your best.
Yeah.
And then you can go trying to improve that. And like you were saying earlier too, about there's people who just kind of, they set a goal and they're new perhaps, and they're very excited about it. And the goal might be really difficult to achieve. And that might actually be demotivating, that you've set a goal that's too
Might be
high.
very achievable, but it's just a ways away. So it's like I want to go to the Olympics in 2032. It's like, okay, great, but that's like 12 years away. Maybe I can do it, but it's not exactly motivating for like what I'm doing today, and it's not going to like inform the tasks that I'm going to complete this week, you know?
Yeah, I actually believe really deeply in that point too, that like no goal is unachievable. It just might be the amount of effort, energy required is more than you're prepared to put into it, or there might just be a way that it has to happen for you that you didn't expect. So I like to joke that, like, there's a guy in Berkeley Bike Club who won the national championship at 85 years old, and so I'm 45, so I still have 40 years to train to win nationals, right? Like, it all matters how you think about it, right? Like, that's not how I think people typically see winning nationals. They want to win it in the all ages category when they're, or they want to win the 23 and under and stuff. And like, there's a lot of reasons why that could or could not happen for you. But if you're willing to change your perspective about it, like, you have a long time to train for these things. There are ways that you could go to the Olympics in 13 years, depending on the sport, depending on a lot of things. It's not impossible.
Yeah. And I feel like, what do you call it? A lot of what you're describing, I think, resonates a lot with the way I think about goal setting. It's like, it's really good to have a clear image of like what it is that you're trying to accomplish or the direction you're trying to move. So regardless of whether it's a process goal, it's a short term, like you create monthly goals that are very like bite-sized and actionable, or you have like a big lofty goal, like I want to race professionally, or I want to like go do this like epic, like the Breck Epic or something that's like really, really like a big task for a lot of people. Like that might be a year away, it might be a few years away, but it has to be empowering and support whatever it is that you're doing, and has to like give you energy for pursuing your activity instead of disempowering. So it's like, I remember there's like a classic story from business where IBM in the 80s had really low sales goals for all their sales guys. And it's like, they would just meet them just by default. Like, they just make a couple of calls and they would just like achieve their goal, but it worked for them. And they would always like just blow their goals out of the water. And it was just like there to provide motivation. That's like, oh yeah, like we're doing well. We're like smashing our target goals. But if they had like really lofty goals, then, all month they haven't achieved their goal. And then maybe they make it in the last like few days of the month, or maybe they don't. But it's like, it's this like weight on people that they have to do this like really lofty thing. But it's like, if your goal is to run a marathon at the end of the year, like maybe your goal for this week or this month is to just get out 3 or 4 days a week, like even if it's just 20 minutes, like just get out the door. And then once you've done that, like you can keep building up and just keep improving your process to get ready for whatever your long-term goal is going to be.
I think the other thing I would throw out there is that I think a lot of people, it's New Year, they get excited about setting goals and they actually set too short term of a goal. So a lot of very popular goals, like I want to lose weight, I want to lose 10 pounds, I want to work out a couple times a week, I want to run 3 times. Those are all really good goals, but I think the challenge is that once you meet that goal, you're not sure where to go with it. It's just happened when I was a lot younger, and I
Yeah.
first was doing some running, and I got into marathon running, and like I ran a marathon, and I didn't know what to do after I ran the marathons. I had this like support group and people that I trained with, and we've been training for, it seemed like forever at the time, right? I think back, it was probably 6 months. I remember doing it. I felt like I've been training people for 3 years from my first marathon. And once I completed the marathon, I didn't know where to go or what to do. And so I kind of fell back into my old habits and not eating as well and training as regularly as I would have liked. And I think that's the one thing I would recommend to people is like try to come up with a way that this is like a long-term lifestyle for you. And that's the way you'll be able to maintain the gains that you make. So I think it's very achievable for people to lose 10 pounds. Like all kinds of people do it on January 1st. They make a goal. They get out there, they get motivated, they work out, they train, they lose weight, they eat better, and then they meet it, and then they don't know what to do, and they start drinking or falling back in their old habits, right? So
Yeah.
maybe come up with a way that you can think about this long term, right? So I know in cycling, when I got into that, it's kind of long term commitment when you start racing. So there's 5 different categories of racing, with 5 being novice and 1 being like professional. And it takes a long time to progress to those things. Like you can't do it in 6 months. In fact, it took me 6 to 8 months just to finish Cat 1 and get my upgrade to Cat 5 and get my upgrade to Cat 4. And then it took me a whole nother like 12 months to do Cat 4. So it was pretty fast. Like I upgraded from 5 to 3 in about 18 months, which is great, right? Most people actually take a lot longer. But the good thing with that is like it's a long-term plan. Like you get into racing and you go through a couple of seasons. There's no like, oh, I did the race and now I'm done. I did a half marathon or I did the marathon and now I'm complete and I don't know what to do. So that's one thing I would recommend is like think about it long term. Like if you want to get into running and marathon training, like maybe make a commitment to do like a half and then do a full and then continue doing that
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah, I feel like that's great to like have little benchmarks and just keep moving the bar a little bit as you're moving along. Or if you have a long-term goal, like that is maybe going to take several years or whatever it is, to create like little goalposts along the way. Like I feel like I've had a few different experiences with goals where like long term, when I got into bike racing, I knew that I was pretty fit and I wanted to give myself the chance to go race professionally. But of course, you don't know when you're starting out and you haven't raced or you're just starting to race, you don't know how far you can go. So it's like that was ultimately like what I wanted to accomplish. And it's like you don't know quite how good you can get until you get there. Like Michael Jordan didn't know like how good he was going to be when he was starting out. He knew he could be good. He put in a lot of work. He started playing professionally, but he didn't know until he had actually like won all these championship games and like done thousands of games and tens of thousands of points or whatever it is that he was like eventually going to be arguably like the greatest ever. But like for me, like I would have maybe goals throughout the year where I wanted to do a certain amount of training. I wanted to set certain like power numbers. I wanted to set PRs on climbs that were important to me. And that was all just kind of incremental progress towards giving myself the best chance that I could have to maybe race professionally one day. And of course, I eventually did that. But like the whole process and like what I would do each year was like more or less the same. It's just like keep moving it forward just a little bit. And even this last year, when the first lockdown happened, I was like, okay, well, I can't ride with the high schoolers anymore. And I have enough flexibility in my time that I'm going to try to train every day, which I did for like a little over 3 months, which was really fun. And I wanted to set myself up to hopefully set some PRs on 2 climbs where I'd lost the KOM to other people. And like, it was, if I broke it by 1 second or 20 seconds, like either way, it was fine with me, but I just like wanted to drop a few seconds off of my time so I could move up from like second or fourth up to first again on those leaderboards. And it was very specific, but I knew I could do it. And the only reason I could do it was because I had this like 20-year process of like running and then running and cycling and then focusing on cycling. And the process that it took for me to race professionally where I was getting paid to ride took several years. like a lot of people don't have the patience for that. But if you have like a lot of like little mini goals along the way, and you're loving the process of getting better and challenging yourself, it's going to work out. And like, if your goal is to run a marathon this year, set yourself up to like try to set faster times after that, or move to another distance that's challenging and fun. Like if you want to run the marathon, then use that strength to like maybe run a fast half the next time you're like going out for something. I feel like there's like endless little nuggets that we can chase after. That's one thing I love about sports is like, I don't know, it's like you can always set a PR on your favorite climbs or your favorite running distance. And it's like, I don't know, it's very actionable usually in a way that some other areas of life are more chaotic and unpredictable sometimes.
Yeah, I think the takeaway here is like think long term. That's maybe the one thing that isn't necessarily encouraged in the way people think about goal setting. They think about New Year's resolutions, and they think about weight loss, and they think about fitness. They think too short term, right? So think long term, think like lifestyle, think like how are you going to make this a part of who you are going forward forever, right? Like health and fitness should be about, and I believe in this really deeply, should be about something that you're dedicated forever, right? It's about having a high quality of life and maintaining that to the end of your life. And so don't look at it as like, I just need to lose these 10 pounds. It's like you need to stay a healthy weight permanently, right? You need to be in good shape and have a high quality of life because you have your mobility and you have all your health. And the way you do that is by like eating well and exercising regularly. Another takeaway I got from what you said was like, try to keep it fun, right? Keep it interesting. You could vary it. But make sure that it's like something that you enjoy, right? If it's really brutal and you're just dieting and miserable, like it's definitely not going to be viewed as something that you can do long term, right? If you have to just completely sacrifice and make it really difficult, really challenging, that's going to be really hard to adopt as a lifestyle forever.
Yeah. I feel like there are definitely sacrifices that we sometimes have to make, especially if we're really like going all in on some goal that we have or something that we want to accomplish. But like for the most part, like the puritanical, like I need to suffer to like accomplish something or like I need to give things up to like have this accomplishment is, I feel like, usually not very empowering. And I feel like it's like kind of embedded in a lot of our culture in a way that it's like, I don't know, like trashy food is generally not very good. So like, why not make it fun where it's like, oh, I'm trying to find like good recipes of like healthy food that I love. Like there's so many good, like mostly vegetable based like dishes that we have at home that I really enjoy eating. And it's like, I know that I'm going to have much higher quality of life throughout my life if I'm like fit and eating well. And it's like, it's fun. It's like something that I want to be doing instead of having the perception that I'm like giving up eating at whatever like fast food place or something like that.
Yeah, I think it also could be very absolute, like no unhealthy food or no junk food or no alcohol. I mean, I do abide by the no alcohol rule. I find that one very easy. It took some time, but I got there and I don't miss it at all.
Yeah.
The no junk food rule, I don't think any cyclist can do that. I mean, we eat so much junk food. We're out riding bicycles and stuff. So it's kind of cool. Like in some ways, you can fit it into your fitness program if you get enough training. And you expend enough calories, right? You can't eat whatever you want. I think that's not perhaps the right way to look at it, but you don't need to be so puritanical and absolute about it. Like you can eat junk food. You don't necessarily need to make every meal this completely boring steamed vegetable type of thing that people associate with health food. I think there's lots of ways to eat healthy, but you don't have to make it flavorless and boring.
Yeah, I feel like if you're trying to win the tour and literally your livelihood matters, then maybe you have to make those kinds of sacrifices. But like for most of it, it's like have a good time doing what you do and like make sure that it contributes to your overall experience in life. And I feel like that's ultimately like my goal. My goal is to be Ned Overend and to be like 60 and still very fit and still enjoy, being active.
Yeah,
and that's like long been kind of a part of my mentality because I think I got into running when I was like 12 or 13, like going into high school. And I still remember like the very first times that I went out, I went across the street to a Catholic private school where they had a field and I ran for like 15 minutes because I knew that I would get sore if I like just started out the cross country practice like in the early summer. So I like started out a couple weeks early just doing these like 15-minute jogs. And I was like so slow when I first started. I slowly got better, but it's like that was over 20 years ago, and I'm still thinking like, oh, like when I'm 60 or 65, I still want to be like riding centuries if I feel like it, you know. And it's not like the fact that I wanted to set a KOM on tunnel has in any way like takes away or is like a short-term goal where it's like, oh, I did it, now I can like stop being fit and stop training. It's just like I'm training forever, like what do I want to accomplish this year? But it's all a part of like being fit for as long as I can be and healthy as long as I can be.
Yeah, I agree. The long term mindset is the most important piece, right? Uh, what other things do you recommend for goal setting? Maybe for people that are more advanced, right? Like we talked a lot about people who want to go pro,
Yeah,
and like that's a big, difficult to achieve goal.
yeah.
You had success there. So how do you think about that type of goal, right? For people who are younger, ambitious, like you work a lot of like great athletes. You work with athletes who are racing in Europe. What do you recommend for people who are like interested in like seeing how far they can take their cycling?
Yeah, I mean, over the long term, I think after several years of good training, for cyclists, you might not see continual big progress in your peak power numbers, but you might see a big increase in your ability to repeat near peak power numbers. So, like a couple years in, my peak power going up Mount Diablo, has gotten a little bit better, but it hasn't gotten that much better over like the last several years and like when I was racing later in my time when I was like racing actively. But my ability to do it late in a ride, which is what matters for most races, got way better. So like what I could do 5 hours into a ride was way better. And I also kind of learned more and more that in fact I am much more gifted aerobically and with like slow twitch power. So I think that my capacity for training and getting gains in those areas was greater. And so early on, I wouldn't recommend that people specialize. But as you get more and more experience and you know that you are actually more of a specialist, you shouldn't waste too much of your energy working on weaknesses. You should make sure that your weaknesses don't prevent you from being successful, but you should try to work on the areas where you can improve the most and make the most gains in a way that's relevant to your goals, and look for ways to continually be learning like how you can get the race results that you want. So like I'm a terrible sprinter. Early on, I was a terrible sprinter, but I also had never trained it very much. But after years of training and like knowing that I had given myself a good chance to be better at sprinting, and I was still not very good, it was confirmation that like if I spent a lot of time working on my sprint, it would actually be just taking away from my ability to progress aerobically, because I'd be spending so much like time and energy and recovery on sprint work, which is not really going to get that much benefit. So it's like it's more effective for me to like do enough that I'm not terrible at it and I can respond to moves that are happening in races, but I should work on my aerobic fitness so that I can drop people and look for other ways to win races and be more strategic about it in a way that's relevant for me. And I think that as people get farther into their development as an athlete, being like as self-aware as you can and knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, knowing like in your body, I feel like if you've been doing it for years, you can feel what and know from experience, like whether or not you have room to improve in certain areas, and focus on those things that are going to like help you get the results that you need. And I don't know. Yeah, just always be like looking for ways that you can make those small adjustments to get that extra like 2%. Like you might not even be able to fully measure sometimes how small the incremental changes are, but sometimes that 2% in some little area, like if you just drop 2 pounds of weight, like your weight's maybe been the same forever, but you can drop that extra 2 pounds. That might be the difference between like winning and losing a championship race. Or if you are like, over the years, I've had advice given to me from people that were very experienced. And I think in retrospect, looking back at it, I should have listened to myself more and like taken their advice as like very knowledgeable, but it's coming from their perspective and their experience as an athlete and their experience as a coach or as a race director or a director sportif, like it's coming from like what they've experienced, and they don't know what it feels like to be in your body, and they don't know whether or not it makes sense to like train more when they think that you should train less or something like that. And I feel like the more you can know what is going to work for you, the better off you'll be. And you can have those conversations with your coach and like figure out what's going to be effective for you.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, and I don't think it's advice that you get frequently. Is that uh, listen to yourself and go with like what you really believe, and that there's this weird paradox with people who are very successful. I think what they did was figure out what was unique about them, and they exploited that, and that's
Yeah.
why they're advice ultimately is less and less relevant, right? Because the more successful someone is, the more I think that they're able to, particularly at that level, to find the unique talent that they have and exploit it, right? So the training methods and what Chris Froome did is not going to really apply to anybody. So I think that's actually excellent advice. Is that people should try really hard to I was just wondering too when you're talking about like how you know if you're a good sprinter or climber or if you're neither, you're obviously a domestique, right? And so which are the things that you need to focus on? I think like what comes naturally and what comes easily and what you find yourself naturally gravitate. I think that's a big sign, and you should listen to that. For people who like, let's say that they're pretty far into their fitness career and they want to set some big goals this year. Like, how do you think people should go about that? Like, what do you do when you work with pretty good athletes with goal setting for them?
I mean, so usually athletes that are pretty exceptional are shooting for championship races, or they're trying to win as many races as possible. So the more the more early you are on your process and the more diverse the events are going to be. Like if you're just like, you're a cat 3 and you're going to try to do like 20 races in the year, like they're all different kinds of races. If you win any of them, or if you get on the podium at any of them, like that's awesome. That's great. So your training should be like diverse enough that like you could potentially do well at some crits. You should be strategic about how you go into the race. You could potentially do well at road races. Maybe like some races are better for you than others, but you should always like give yourself the chance to do well and like go in with the intention that you're going to like do your best. But if you're trying to win championship races, like there's very specific demands that particular course is going to have. And the training becomes much more specific for like trying to be mentally and physically prepared to do whatever it takes on that course, and given the athletes that you'll be racing against. And so a lot of times, like I remember with Sandy, when we were getting ready for nationals, each year we did workouts that were pretty specific to the courses that he was racing, and eventually it paid off and he won the U23 national championships. But we were like literally looking at how long the Strava segments were for each of the climbs, because it's like the descents you get to recover when you're mountain bike racing. Like it might take a lot of work and a lot of focus to like maneuver the descents, but the climbs are like very specific in how long they are. So we literally just did workouts that were like almost just mapping how long those climbs are going to be and just going like full gas for like 3 minutes, 2 minutes recovery, full gas for 2 minutes, 2 minutes recovery, full gas for 90 seconds, and then like 10 minutes, and then cycle through again, because he's doing like 4 laps on a loop that has like a certain profile. And so that way, like he's used to just doing the most possible work in the exact way that course is laid out, so that it gives him the best chance to know what it feels like, know what it's going to look like to do exactly that type of effort. Whereas like if somebody's just going to do like 10, 20 races, you want to have like good fitness, you want to have a good sprint, you want to not get dropped on the climbs. But unless you know that there's like 1 or 2 races that are the absolute like bar for you, and the other races are like important but they're not that important, it makes sense to really narrow in on whatever your main goals are. And again, like
Yes.
Once you're at a certain level, if you can get 2% better on your peak power, like that's amazing. When you're early on, you might see 10% gains from year to year. And like with the high schoolers that I work with, like we'll see them improve their time trial times on an uphill time trial that we do. It'll improve by like 10 to 20% for like most of the athletes over the course of the season. And it's great. It's really fun. But it's like, that's very different than going from like, 400 watts for 20 minutes to 410 watts for 20 minutes, because you're trying to win nationals.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, it's obvious, I think, in a way, a lot of people like focus on cycling and their season, right? They want to have some focus races and try to peak around those races and use the other races as training. I think that's a tried and true methodology. And I guess I would suggest, like, if you want to just be fit and run or just stay in shape, like that's another way to do it, right? It's like look at an event calendar, come up with a bunch of things that you want to do, and then like focus on a few things to make sure that you're rested, but enter a bunch of other events because it's like it's fun and it'll keep you motivated. And I'm looking forward to events coming back this year. It's been challenging even for me to stay focused with no like big goal, like no race or run or whatever it is that I want to focus on. I felt like even this winter, like almost just kind of like losing focus on my training. Like I just didn't have I got out there and I was able to do my training because like I just have to, and that's just who I am, and I just do it. But I didn't feel like I could just have the fire, the desire to push, because it just wasn't clear like why, like what event am I trying to go for, right? So I'm really looking forward for that coming back, and I think everybody is looking forward to that. And and so for me, I'm planning and training for events that I think will happen in the second half of the year.
Yeah, and I think it's good regardless of whether or not there are event cancellations and a global medical pandemic. Like it's good to be creative with how you find things to focus on and how you find things to like be motivated about. I feel like this year it was like extra difficult because there was the pandemic and event cancellations, but then there was also a couple months in California where like you couldn't, it was really challenging with the air quality. Some days it was just like not possible to go outside and exercise without really having trouble with your lungs. And some days it was like much better, but it was still not great. And it was very unpredictable for like a few months. But assuming that the world's not on fire, even if the pandemic continues to go on for several months, I feel like creativity is going to be an integral part of 2021, because both for running and cycling and triathlon, there might not be events in the same type of schedule that they usually happen. I think that there will be, but it might be weighted later in the year. So I feel like early in the year, it can be good to come up with creative ways to like challenge yourself with segments that you like if you're a cyclist, or distances that you want to train to as a runner, like try to set a fast time in the mile, set a fast time in the 5K, and maybe, or just have a series of 5Ks, like maybe starting in February, every month you do a 5K time trial, and then you set yourself up for racing like in the summer when events hopefully come back, for example. And I feel like that kind of thing, especially if you have like other people involved, like you have running buddies, even if they're faster or slower than you, like you can still try to challenge each other to set PRs, you know, like see who can have the best PRs, even if one of you is running.
I got excited on setting Peloton leaderboard PRs at one point because my wife sent me this thing that showed that the golfer Rory McIlroy was in the top 20 or something. So I found the class that is in the top 20, and I was trying to get a top 20. I think I got a top 50 or something, which is really good. I mean, there's like 20 or 30,000 people on these leaderboards on Peloton. It's like it's amazing. So that was really fun. I was like, I couldn't beat a pro golfer, so you know, there's that to it. But I got close. And then the other thing I did was the 1 mile. So that was during quarantine, right? At least I could go out and run. And so I was able to beat my 1 mile time. And so I think people have to continue to focus on those types of things, at least for the next couple of months.
Yeah. And I feel like effort is never wasted if you are doing something like training, where like if you took a few years off, like it would take you a while to like get back into it. But if you have like a year or two where you can't have events, but you keep training and you keep putting in the effort and you keep taking care of yourself, you're setting yourself up for whatever your next goals can be once you have like events that you can shoot for, or you know, where you want to win a race or be on the podium or set a PR at the half marathon or whatever it is. I feel like that was kind of a lesson that I experienced in college, where I wasn't competing during that time, but I was still training just because I wanted to be active and healthy and fit, and I wanted to get faster. And so I trained as though I was racing, but I wasn't good enough to be a walk-on on the, you know, cross country and track team at Cal, because it's a big school and they have fast runners. And I didn't find bike racing until after school, but I still trained and I still got better. And if I hadn't been doing that, like I wouldn't have been able to race effectively and end up as a professional in cycling and set, like a bunch of fast times on these climbs around here. And this last year, it's like, it's that 20 years of effort that put in that allowed me to set a KOM on tunnel and take it back from Sean. But it's the same thing right now. It's like, oh, maybe I can't race for another 3 months, 6 months even, or more. But it's like what I'm doing today, what I'm doing this week, what I'm doing this month is going to either like set me up to be able to have a good experience doing that. Or if you ease up too much, it's not going to help you reach your goals.
Are you back? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah. The last thing, there's 2 other points I wanted to make here, and I think we can wrap this up on goal setting. Is like we talked about, trying to figure out how you want to set your goals. So there's some very specific methodologies you can do if you're a novice, right? You can do an FTP test. You can do a 1 mile test. You can just sign up for a 10K or a half marathon and see what you get. And then you can train and try to improve, right? That's a really straightforward way to do it. I think we did that in the beginning of my training, right? We did a 5-minute test, a 20-minute cycling test, and set all the benchmarks. Some of them I still can't beat. I did really well. So that was cool. And then the other thing is like, just look at your goals incrementally and make them interesting and exciting and achievable. So you're motivated, right? I see a lot of people who, I think they're too ambitious in the beginning because they're exciting and they're excited and it's new and they want to do something really incredible. Like, we're joking with people that are in Cat 4 and they want to go race professionally in cycling, or people that just start running and then they want to race Boston Marathon, right? I hear that a lot. And those are great goals, but it might be really ambitious for you if you're new. So try to focus on the incremental goals that were required to get there. And like maybe you never achieve it, and that's okay. Or maybe you do achieve it, but it might take some time. So just be prepared to think long term. Like if you want to run Boston, that is a process for people, and to get a sub 3 hour marathon is really difficult task. And there's very few people that can just go out and do it. It takes time, effort, and energy to train. So make a commitment to like a certain amount of time training a week. Then you can make commitments to different like goals in terms of like paces and stuff, right? So there's ways to kind of like just think about it and incrementally improve. That's what I did when I was into ultra cycling. Started out 50 miles, 100 miles. Then I got up to doing weekend rides, 120, and I even charted it all out, 120, 100. I went 10 miles every weekend up to like a solo 200-mile ride through. I rode from Berkeley to San Jose over Mount what is it? Yeah, I did Hamilton solo. I don't know if I'd recommend that. I did it once and I was like, maybe not the best idea for a solo ride, particularly if you've never even done the course, but I did live to tell the tale. But yeah, like just think about it incrementally and like how you can go about setting big goals so you have something to achieve, and then working through your schedule to make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, we just want to make sure we have goals that are motivating and like inspiring and give us energy for what we're doing. I think that's like the core of any good goal, whatever it is, whether it's a process goal or like a short-term goal or a long-term like epic goal. It just has to be helpful in enhancing your experience and helping you to perform in whatever ways that are important to you. I feel like as long as it accomplishes those things, it'll be a good goal, whether it's to like train 4 days a week or to go, set a world record or to meet the Boston qualifying times, like whatever it is. If it takes, 5 years or 10 years, you want to make sure your goals are helping you to achieve what you want to be doing.
Absolutely. Well, anything else you'd like to say in closing here?
No, that's good. I just hope everyone has a good year and like, be creative, find ways to like make this year good for you in ways that are valuable to you. Obviously, life's always going to have challenges, but I don't know, we can like allow ourselves to be beaten up by them, or we can look for creative ways to try to keep moving forward in whatever ways we want to be operating as humans.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Well, thanks for joining. Send us your comments, your commentary. You can find us on social media. like, and subscribe, and we'll see you back here next week.